I thank Baba for his extraordinary love, and I offer this sharing to him and to the Baba in each of you. I've been asked to share some of my experiences with Baba and some of my favorite quotes, to show his guidance, how his guidance and love have directed and changed my life. So I'm just going to chat and tell you a little of my story. But of course, remember, this story is just one of millions of stories of how Baba guides all of us with his compassionate love. Excuse me. Baba has been at the center of my life for, gosh, it's like 48 years now. He is my guide and my support. I like to think of him as my North Star, my true north. When I set the compass of my heart by Baba's guidance, I know I am never lost, never lost. I had the blessing of 2 personal interviews with Baba early on and 2 interviews much later. And they were significant turning points in this life. Interviews are wonderful. But actually, the real guidance and lessons that I've received from Baba happened through his teachings and in the inner relationship with him, the interview. I was raised as an atheist in a very loving Jewish family. My parents were great, honorable people, and I'm so grateful to have had them in my life. They were my first teachers on how to love. But the idea of God or higher consciousness was really just not a part of my upbringing, not a part of my language. But I do remember as a young child lying in the grass, watching the bugs, feeling one with the earth, and as children do. And yet, though I had no words to express it, I had a longing for something more. I was introduced to Baba's teachings in 1972 by my first husband, and I'm very grateful for that. I was 22 years old. And when we visited a yoga institute in Mexico, I had my first experience of Baba's presence. In that tiny little meditation room there were photos of Baba and every teacher and form of the divine all around the walls. And there was vibhuti this thick on everything. But it was the energy, the feeling that captured me. I had a heart-opening experience. I felt wrapped in love and acceptance. Baba calls it the love of 1,000 mothers. And so I knew instinctively that this was a path I needed to explore. And this began, well, a new chapter in my life. My first trip to India for Baba's Darshan was just a few months later in 1973. And Baba's teachings were all around on stone tablets and the books I read and in the many discourses Baba gave. And his words became the guiding force in my life. I began to have a sense of what life is really about. What are we doing here? In Baba's presence, I felt like I had come home. My mind still had lots of questions and lots of doubts, but my heart knew I was exactly where I needed to be. First slide, please. This wonderful quote from Baba says it all. After long searches here and there, in temples and in churches, in earths and in heavens, at last you come back, completing the circle from where you started, to your own soul, and find that he, for whom you have been seeking all over the world, for whom you have been weeping and praying in churches and temples, on whom you were looking as the mystery of all mysteries shrouded in the clouds, is the nearest of the near, is your own self, the reality of your life, body, and soul. That is your own nature. Assert it, manifest it. It is the truth. Incredibly inspiring. Next slide, please. Here's a photo of what Darshan was like at Brindavan in Whitefield back in 1973. That's me up on my knees, black hair, and so very young. We were all waiting for Baba to come out. See, there are just a couple of lines of devotees sitting along the driveway under the flame trees. Next slide, please. And here's Baba. He was in his 40s and incredibly energetic. He was building colleges, building the ashram, building hospitals, and more. He's so wonderful. Next slide, please. And this next photo is what Darshan was like on Thursdays and Sundays under the big tree in Vrindavan. And he was so close to us all. He was so accessible. In those early years of coming into Baba's direct orbit, I slowly became more comfortable with the language of devotion, leading bhajans, making trips to India for Baba's darshan. And Baba slowly allowed my heart to open to him. And the inner relationship began to develop. As this became more familiar, I started to trust this relationship. Next slide, please. This was Mahashivaratri, 1977 in Prashanti Nilayam in the Purnachandra. It was an amazing experience. And it was the last large public Mahashivaratri until many years later. And the day started very early with the Abhishek ceremony. Baba bathed the silver statue of Shirdi Baba with milk and water and produced a jewel that he placed on Shirdi's forehead and showered the statue with tons and tons of vibhuti. I'm sure you've seen photos of this. But you know, Baba was beaming and smiling and clearly enjoying himself. Then when he was done, he took the pail of tirt, which was the water and the milk and vibhuti, and a long whisk and started moving around the Purnachandra. Spontaneously, a row opened up way on the men's side and came all the way across to the ladies' side, right in front of where I was sitting. Baba came down the line and stopped directly in front. He dipped the whisk in the pail and whoosh, swept it over our heads. We were all completely drenched to the skin, and the tear went right into our eyes and mouths. Baba was laughing and laughing. It was a totally joyful blessing. Next slide, please. Then in the evening, Baba produced the lingam. This experience took everything deeper for me. I had a visceral, felt sense of powerful experience of healing, empowering divine energy. And I felt this powerful path of love really become my own, not filtered through the perspective of anybody else's thoughts or beliefs, but direct experience straight to my heart. So in 1979, Baba called my husband and me in for an interview, my first. He told us to have our 2 sons. My heart just broke open like a coconut. I cried and cried. I knew that these souls were Baba's boys, and I had been given my homework assignment: birth them, care for them, raise them in Baba's light. Now, if you really want to be in the spiritual classroom, have a family. We all know how complex life is: work, parenting, life in a body. Everything conspires to push our buttons, and so we react. Boy, do we react. Baba tells us our real identity is the eternal Atma, the higher self, and at the same time, a bundle of tendencies from past lives, programming from our families of origin, and immersed in all kinds of complicated roles and relationships. This is the curious paradox of being human. So how do we negotiate this life? How do we live the human values? First off, Baba tells us that we must truly understand that there is nothing in our lives that is not our spiritual path. We don't have, the spiritual path over here and regular life over there. This is it. This is our spiritual path. And he tells us that love is our true nature. Baba says, quote, "For everything, love is primary. Love in speech is truth. Love in action is righteousness. Love in thought is peace. Love in understanding is nonviolence." He instructs us how to be true to our divine inner reality and our natural humanness. Follow the path of love and service. Offer everything to the divine. Learn healthy detachment. Learn to control the mind and become, we hope, wiser and happier. We can learn to know and honor both our original essential goodness and our original essential godness. But of course, it takes time. It takes time, and we make mistakes. We make lots of mistakes. You know, one of my favorite stories is from Mr. Kusturi's book, Loving God. In it, he relates how Baba reassured him after he had made a mistake that really, really upset him. Baba said to him, "This is not the first time you have blundered. I am always with you. Go on stumbling. I will follow, saving you from the hurt." Go on stumbling. Well, I can really relate. Boy, can I relate. Through my 30s and 40s, I stumbled my way through parenting, marriage, business. This was a really intense classroom for learning how to put Baba's teachings into action. And looking back, what I learned was how critically important it is to develop real integrity. It's not enough to think lofty spiritual concepts and then have one's words and actions not match. When thoughts, words, and actions are not in alignment, we can do great damage to ourselves and to the people we love. We all know it's so easy to get caught up in life, mindlessly running around, doing what seems to be so important, and actually completely miss what really is important: love. So, how do we stay present and aware and conscious of who we are, even as we are taking care of all those many tasks of daily life? Well, Baba gives us so much guidance, so many teachings along the way. So here's just one example. I remember hearing Baba say, "Duty without love is deplorable. Duty with love is desirable. Love without duty is divine." So one day when my kids were little, I was making dinner and I was tense and irritated about something, who knows what. But suddenly I could hear Baba's voice in my mind saying those words: "Duty without love is deplorable." Deplorable. God, it was like an arrow to my heart. What energy was I putting in my kids' food? Right in that moment, I made a silent vow to myself to begin practicing greater mindfulness in all the small moments of life, in every task, and with every word spoken. Next slide, please. Baba says, "God's love is like a lighthouse beacon. It shows you the right path. Divert the boat of your life towards the lighthouse of divine love. You are then bound to gain the shore of bliss. You do not need to do any special type of penance. Fill your mind with love. While attending to your daily chores, regard all of them as offerings to the divine. God is omnipresent. See God in everything and every being. Let steadfast love be enshrined in your heart." So as the years went by, I focused on being a mother, wife, business partner, and on my inner relationship with Baba. We hosted a Sai center in our home for several years, and I became a Sai spiritual education teacher. We made several trips as a family to the ashram. Then in the late 90s, my life changed dramatically. My husband and I took different paths, and I found myself single once more after nearly 3 decades of marriage. It was a very, very challenging time. And I was afraid. I really didn't know if I was going to be okay. But you know, Baba teaches us that happiness is a space between two sorrows and vice versa. Our job is to learn how to develop equanimity no matter what happens, regardless of praise or blame, loss or gain. Baba once asked me, "Where is peace?" He then answered, "Peace is inside. Outside is pieces." And pieces it was. So this was a time when I really had to fire up that inner relationship with Baba. Let me tell you, it was not easy. I could have turned away. But thankfully, I turned towards his guidance. The more I trusted that the divine was taking care of me, the happier and less fearful I became. Baba was my North Star, shining within and leading the way. And I knew deep inside that all of this was grace. Next slide, please. Baba says, your heart is the lock and your mind is the key. When you turn the key to the left, it locks. But if you turn the key to the right, it unlocks. It is the turning of the key that makes the difference. Hence, the mind is the cause for your liberation as well as bondage. Thank you for that slide. So I began to realize that I was capable of causing myself a whole lot of suffering. So when my monkey mind would wander off into obsessive thought, into fear, into anger, I would practice turning the key, flipping the switch from negative thoughts to chanting Om Shri Sai Ram. Consistently bringing the mind back, bringing the mind back, bringing the mind back, back to the present and to that inner connection with the divine. I found that when I turned the mind one way, my heart experienced contraction and emotional reactivity. Turn it the other way, expansion, calm, peace of mind. It really, really saved me. Clearly, any idea that we have that we can somehow control others or control what happens in our lives is a huge illusion. But what makes all the difference is how we react to what happens. That is what we can control. When we lower our emotional reactivity, we can find that peace of mind within. Next slide, please. I love this quote. Love this quote. Baba says, we become what we contemplate. By constant thought, an idea gets imprinted on our heart. The thoughts we indulge in affect not only others, but us too. We become what we feel and act. Let every second become a chance to entertain a new thought, a deeper love, a broader heart. Every second marks a new birth. It is a chance for achieving a new victory. Thank you for this slide. I spent the next 5 years doing a lot of inner work. My sons were growing up, and so I made several solo trips to the ashram for Baba's Darshan, and that was really new for me. I had wonderful experiences there that even further deepened my confidence in my higher self, in the inner voice. In 2002, I was reintroduced to an old side OT acquaintance from 25 years earlier, and that was Bouche. He had also been doing a lot of inner work on himself, and we found that we were very much of one mind about values and the inner relationship. And we felt as though Baba had brought us together. Bruce asked me to marry him. I said yes. We didn't want a big wedding. We talked and talked about it a lot. What we wanted was a ceremony that was totally focused on the divine, no distractions. So in January 2003, we traveled to the ashram to have Baba's Darshan and just to say thank you to him. At that point, my last interview with Baba had been 23 years earlier, and Bruce had never had one in 25 years. We had long ago gotten over any idea that we needed an interview. We both felt Baba's presence so strongly on the interview. We had our wedding rings with us. We were just going to say thank you and let the rings soak up the Darshan energy. Baba had other plans for us. Miraculously, we both ended up in front row of Darshan just through the normal chit system. Baba came into the hall on the ladies' side, and as he was coming closer and closer, he was staring at me, smiling, and inwardly I was saying, oh, thank you, Swami, for everything in this life. I love you. Suddenly I realized he was coming straight over to me, and I was utterly, utterly shocked when he said, go inside, and called us in for an interview. It was completely unexpected. So we didn't say a word about marriage, nor did Bruce show the rings to Baba. There were so many other things going on. There were 9 of us there, including some close friends who Baba had also called in separately from us. And when he called Bruce and me alone into the small family interview room, he just silently took the wedding rings out of Bruce's hand, and he went and sat in his chair. We were sitting at his feet. Baba, still without saying anything, he played and played with the wedding rings and rolled them over in his hands and blew on the rings and said very forcefully into the rings, marriage. Then he handed us each our own ring and told us to put them on. We realized Baba had just married us. Clearly, he knew everything. Here was the wedding we wanted, and in a way that was far, far beyond anything we could have imagined. Anything we could have imagined. And so began another new chapter of life. And so this photo, this slide here, this is a photo of Bruce and me holding hands with Baba after he married us. In a second interview, a couple of days later, we spent another half hour alone with Baba. And at one point we were sitting at his feet, and he put his hands on our head and gave us a long blessing. And he kept calling us husband and wife, just in case we didn't get it that we were well and truly married. During those interviews, many other amazing things happened too. Just too much to tell here. But Baba held our hands. He talked about my parents, our sons, work, the past, the future, the path of love. And we laughed a lot. We laughed and laughed and laughed. He was our dearest intimate friend, just as always been on the inner, our best friend, as if it was simply a continuation of the inner relationship that we've both felt with Baba for so many years. And he filled us to the brim with love. He readied us for this new chapter of life. So I can't believe that it's been nearly 18 years since then. Bruce and I have gone through so many of life's challenges and joys during this time. We helped our parents through their final years and their transitions to the next life. And our dear Baba left his body too. During this time, Bruce had a very difficult 2-year journey through cancer that challenged us in so many ways. Baba came to him often in dreams, giving us guidance and support. But that's Bruce's story to tell. I was Bruce's caregiver, and it was really hard. It was really scary. But I felt Baba with us all the time, and I surrendered everything over to the divine, all my fears, the not knowing what was going to happen, the exhaustion. I worked hard at staying positive and cheerful for Bruce. And every day I visualized putting Bruce into the hands of the divine over and over and over again and letting go of the outcome. And I chanted the Gayatri, did lots of Namasmarana. For both of us, ultimately, that journey strengthened our confidence in the guidance from within and made our marriage partnership even stronger. It was such incredible grace that Bruce regained his health. Sairam for that. Baba tells us that no matter what happens, we should say, this is good for me. And we know in our hearts that it really was. And of course, there's also been joy, so much joy, service, family, work that I love. Life is rich with love and lessons. I no longer fear the future. I know that all is in the hands of the divine. Learning to rely on the higher self, listening to the inner guidance, has made this life an amazing journey. Even if I could, I don't think I would change anything. Everything is a sign of his grace. Speaking of signs, I remember once when Bruce and I were on our way to a cancer treatment after a really difficult year and a half. We were driving to Santa Barbara over the mountains on a 2-lane road. There was construction going on, so one lane was blocked. And we had to stop and wait until we could proceed. We sat there talking about how tired we were and how are we going to be able to continue to stay positive? Then the pilot car came and backed up to us. And right in front of our faces was a huge 5-foot bright orange sign that simply said, "Follow me." We just laughed and laughed. It was so clearly one of Baba's calling cards. We knew he was with us, listening to us. So please show that slide with that quote again, please. Baba says, life should rest on the 4 pillars of truth, righteousness, peace, and love, which hold it firm against the turbulent waves of joy and grief. Of these 4, love is the crucial support. For it is the very breath, the sole purpose of life. Love God and acquire the strength to meet the upsets of life. Love liquidates the blows of fate. Thank you for that slide. Excuse me. So I'd like to close with a small experience I had in an interview in 2003 that's as fresh in my mind as if it were yesterday, really. Bruce and I were sitting quietly at Baba's feet alone with him. Baba had his eyes closed and his hands raised upwards in that familiar pose. Clearly, he was someplace else. And as I was looking up at him, I noticed the tiniest speck of white lint in the front of his hair. And a thought just kind of flashed through my mind that I'd love to take the lint out of Baba's hair. Several moments later, Baba turned to Bruce. He opened his eyes and said, "She's thinking about my hair." I said, "Yes, Swami, there's a tiny bit of lint in your hair." He looked deeply into my eyes and he leaned forward slowly, graciously, and said, "Take." That's all he said. And so I did. It was so intimate, so simple, and really such a profound, clear message. This is what Baba does. He offers his guidance to us. He offers himself to us. This is our path to our true selves. And it's our choice, our opportunity. Will we take what he has come to give? Baba says, take one step toward me, and I shall take 100 towards you. It's up to us to take that step toward him in our hearts and our minds, to move forward in life confidently, to let go of fear, to be brave and courageous, especially in these very challenging times. If you keep taking that step every day, Baba says, what we are is God's gift to us. What we become is our gift to God. You know, Baba's guidance is always here to help us to become fearless, to become beautiful, to become who we truly, really are. So I pray, may we all come to know our true self more and more. And may we know the infinite blessings of the divine. Jai Sai Ram. Thank you.
Well, Sai Ram, Leslie, that was lovely, a beautiful talk. In fact, it leaves us with our hearts yearning for something more. And I'm wondering, we have a couple more minutes left, if you could share with us one more Baba story.
Sure. You know, I wasn't sure we'd have time for this story, but to me, it really makes clear the fact that the inner relationship with Baba is absolutely real. During the first interview that Bruce and I had with Baba in 2003, in the outer room, Baba asked me, what religion are you? Well, as I mentioned before, having been raised as an atheist, it was the perfect question. Of course, Baba asked me that. And so I answered, I'm a devotee of God, Swami. I'm your devotee. Baba closed his eyes for a few moments and then waved his hand in a circle and materialized a gold chain with a gold cross about this big, studded with 11 diamonds. This really surprised me, not only because of the materialization, which was fabulous, but also because I'm not a Christian. And I immediately wondered why Swami chose a cross. I knew there was a reason. Baba never does anything random. So immediately the thought ran through my mind, well, I wouldn't be able to explain this cross to my elderly father, who was Jewish and an atheist. But Baba unwound the gold chain, opened the clasp, and leaned forward, and he put the necklace on me. Now, Baba had said that he would see us before we left, but you never really know what that means. So after this interview, not knowing if Baba was going to call us in again, I started chatting with Baba in my mind, thanking him and, discussing with him my mixed feelings about the diamond cross he had made. I would pray to Baba in my mind, Swami, I'm so grateful for the gift of the necklace. And to me, it's all the same and it's wonderful. But my father is Jewish and an atheist. He just wouldn't understand why you gave me a cross. I just won't show it to my parents because they're so old. They were in their 90s. I don't want to upset them. But if you do call us in for a second interview, maybe you could change the necklace. My parents love and respect you, so maybe a necklace with your picture. And maybe could you please make something for Bruce, like a ring, so he doesn't feel sad that only I received something from you. So I'm just chatting, just in those words to Baba. I didn't have any outer contact with Baba during those days. I didn't write any letters either. And when Baba did call us in for a second interview 2 days later, we were just so thrilled. And there were 9 of us again in that outer room. And as Baba entered, he materialized vibhuti just for the women, I think. I quickly ate mine, while the others held theirs in their hands, and they weren't quite sure what to do. Baba gave them paper to put the vibhuti in. Then he turned to me to give me paper, and I said, very sheepishly, I already ate it all, Swami. And he just laughed and laughed and laughed. After Baba made a really beautiful pendant for one of the other women there, he sat back in his chair and he gestured in an almost, what I like to think of as almost a Yiddish manner, with both hands. And he said, "Father is Jewish. You don't like the necklace?" Can you believe that? I said, "Swami, the necklace is so lovely, but you know I'm not a Christian." Then Baba told me to give him the necklace. I took it off, and he took it and he held it in his hand, his closed hand, far away from his body, and he blew on it 3 times, long, slow breaths. And then when he opened his hand, out jumped a new necklace and a ring, which fell to the floor at Bruce's feet. Baba had transformed the cross with 11 diamonds into a ring and into a gold chain with a pendant with Baba in the blessing pose. The ring was a large green diamond set in gold. And Bruce picked it up and he went to hand it to Baba, and Baba said, "No, that's for you." Then Baba put the ring on Bruce's right hand and said, "Perfect fit." Then he handed Bruce the necklace and told him, "You put it on her." So this became my Mangala Sutra, my wedding necklace. This is it. Baba had answered all of my requests. He changed the necklace to a picture of him, made Bruce a ring, and even verbally honored my father, which was so lovely. You know, that is truly the love of 1,000 mothers. And so I know every moment that he's listening inside all the time. I no longer have the urge to ask him for anything like I did then. I know he gave me what I asked for at that time so that I would really have confidence in the inner relationship. It is real. He hears all of us. He hears all of us. And I really encourage you all to develop that inner communication and to have confidence in it, real confidence. Sairam.